I'm Mike Brilla, host of the Inspired Teacher Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful Tuesday, or it may be well into Wednesday, depending on where it is that you may be joining us around the world. But as always, thank you so much for making us part of your day, part of your listening pleasure, or part of your viewing pleasure. And as always, ladies and gents, thank you for all of your support. We really appreciate all the feedback, the likes, the shares, the follows. Again, it goes a long way when we do what we do for you, so we can bring you some amazing conversations day in, day out, week in and week out. And today we have an amazing show, and I'm very excited to get right into it. We have two amazing guests, and we're going to be having a wonderful conversation as I've been able to connect with Michelle previously, for a while now and setting up the show. But today is the first time I get to speak with Travis. But regardless, we're definitely going to be having a wonderful conversation surrounded just about, Prosolve. And of course, like what we're talking about today, empowering the whole learner for the future. So I would love to welcome to our show today, Mr. Travis Allen and Michelle Ament. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Travis, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. My wife, who's now putting 4 kids to bed by herself, maybe not so much, but I'm doing great.
Excellent. Michelle, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having us on the show, Fonz.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited about today, and we already have Arvin here who's joining us. It says this is going to be awesome. So thank you, Arvin, for joining us on LinkedIn. And again, make sure that you give us your comments, or if you have any questions and so on, please feel free to bring those onto the show as we have this amazing conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off with Michelle first. So Michelle, for all our audience members that are joining us live, or are going to be catching this on the replay, if you can give us a little brief background and what your context is within the education space and in the Prosolve space.
Sure. So I have been in education for 25 years. And as an educator, I started my career as a classroom teacher. So I taught elementary, 5th and 6th grade primarily. And then I moved into leadership roles. So I had a site leadership role all the way to a district admin leadership role. And, in all of those roles, the thing that I love the most is really designing amazing learning experiences for kids. That's what fueled me, whether I was a classroom teacher or an administrator. It was figuring out how to do learning differently. And so that's been a passion of mine. And it's what drew me to Prosolve, was this opportunity to have a greater impact in designing learning for both adults and students. And so I have the privilege of being the chief academic officer at Prosolve, and have just love every minute of my job because it's all about designing and figuring out how to impact learning in a positive way, whether it's for students or whether it's for adults. So I feel like I get to live my dream out every day in my role.
That is amazing. And that's quite a trajectory there. 25 years in education. And of course, that passion that you have. And even speaking with you prior to, as we worked out logistics for the show and everything, that is definitely something that really comes through. So I'm very thankful that you get to be on the show today to definitely share your passion and your expertise as we talk about Prosolve. Travis, how about yourself, Travis? If you can give our audience members a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space and in the Prosolve space.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Prosolve. And, I've had the privilege of getting to work with Michelle and learning from her as her role with our company as chief academic officer. My story is a little bit different how I came into this space. When I was 17 years old as a high school student in Fayetteville, Georgia, I started using my smartphone to take notes and use it in my senior year of high school. And of course, the policy in my school was no cell phones allowed. So my teacher took up the device, gave it to my principal. Principal called my parents. I went home super frustrated, did what most kids do, complained to my parents. My dad eventually said, "Shut up. If you don't like education, do something about it," right? And so I spent 4 months building a YouTube video showing how one to one mobile learning would transform education. And that video was picked up by Steve Jobs, went viral around the world. And by complete accident, I fell into this world of education technology. And so from there, I went to college at Kennesaw State University, and for the first 10 years of my career doing this, we would mostly do motivational keynotes and speaking at conferences. So, I've presented at 43 different states, 12 different countries, sharing our message and our vision from a unique student perspective on what we want to see happen in education reform. And it was only just in the last few years that we've really kind of evolved beyond just this idea of putting technology in the classroom. Now it's much more about how do we create career readiness? How do we create problem solvers? How do we create kids who think differently and succeed in today's post AI world? And so that's a lot of what we talk about now.
Excellent. And that's something that I really love. And I'm just thankful for that because it just seems like yesterday also we had a show where we're trying to, like you mentioned, make it student centered, that collaboration, future ready skills, and those skills that students will need because we know that the workforce is forever evolving. And, whatever it is that they cover now, by the time they get into university or whether it's a technical school or anything of that sort, it's going to look very different. So I'm glad that there are many companies such as yourself that are being very active and looking into that future, but also preparing and creating resources for teachers and students to get them ready. And I absolutely love that. So let's learn a little bit more about Prosolve for our audience members, again, that are joining us and may not have heard of Prosolve yet. We'll go ahead and start with Travis first. So Travis, question for you is, as far as your mission at Prosolve, can you tell us a little bit, first of all, what your mission is and what resources you have available for our educators?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying, we are obsessed with building future ready students, building career readiness in a post AI world. And we do this through the power of experiential learning. How do we learn by simulating real world problems or letting kids solve actual real world problems? And the reason this is our mission, the reason that I think we work in the education space is that the way I look at it is if we think about career readiness, for most of human history, career readiness was physical labor. Your ability to physically do something was imperative to survival. And then we created machines to do the physical labor for us, the industrial age, ushering us into a new career readiness age, which I'll call the knowledge age, right? If you could just get a 4 year college degree, you're guaranteed success in the workforce. Well, just like we created machines to do the physical labor for us, we've now created the internet and now AI to do the knowledge for us. And so we often ask ourselves, what is the future of career readiness? And we see it as that ability to solve problems, that ability to have the soft skills, the emotional skills, and above all else, have the human intelligence to solve problems. And when I say human intelligence, I'm talking about the unique things that make us human and solve problems that AI can't solve. And it's those skills that we think are essential to that workforce. And so, to answer your second question, what do we do to create that? Well, we focus on experiential learning, and we either build simulations of real world problem solving or we let kids solve actual real world problems. So we sell products and curriculum most often to the after school and summer space. One of the ones that we are most known for is what you see behind me here, Quest. Quest is kind of like a video game meets board games meets escape rooms, all tied to a curriculum that is developing problem solving skills and social emotional learning. So kids wake up in a post apocalyptic world where all the adults have vanished and they have to rise up and become problem solvers. On day one, they form a government and they decide, are we going to be a dictatorship? Are we going to be democracy? How are we going to make choices? They have to make tough moral and ethical decisions. Do I steal food from my neighboring tribe? Do I give them food? These are all things that they do in our simulated world we've created for them. But the end goal is, how are we building students for the future workforce, and how are we developing that human intelligence every step of the way?
That is amazing, and one of the things that I love about that that really resonates is again just bringing it and making it student centered, offering that opportunity for students to have a learning experience. And what you're explaining to me, through your products, it's almost the teacher becomes that learning engineer and is engineering this wonderful just environment for students to really dive in deep to just their knowledge. And like we talked about human intelligence, that we've got our friend Erica Sandstrom who's joining us also, that she absolutely loved when you mentioned that. So that's something that is wonderful, and definitely something that not obviously not through Prosolve, but many years ago when I was in the classroom, I definitely see the benefits of that, and I'm glad that again we need to bring this forward now within our education space and definitely leverage this. So I'm really excited about that. Now, Michelle, through your passion as the chief academic officer, and tell us a little bit about how your passion and the work that you do ties in into this overall mission, and how working at ProSolve has really maybe helped you just see this big overall picture, because this is I'm really excited right now.
Well, great question, Fonz. When I was an administrator, one of my roles was to find curriculum solutions, look for ways to things to bring into the school district that I was a part of. And we had a strong focus on the 4 C's. We really believed in fostering the 4 C's in our district. But one of the things we could never really figure out is how to implement or actualize that in a really highly engaging way across all of our classrooms. And so, one of the things, and I give you that context because I think it's hard for educators to bring experiences like Travis mentioned that are building human intelligence, building those career ready skills, while at the same time honoring academic standards. And so, one of the things that when I saw ProSolve and saw what this amazing product, these solutions that the team had created, I was just so amazed and said, "Oh my gosh, this is experiential learning. This is a social emotional curriculum," and started to kind of look at what were the attributes of Quest and of our SLED solution that really did did really expand on experiential learning. And so for me, I think you asked what fuels me or what do I get to do on my day-to-day work. And it's really figuring out how to bring experiential learning on a grander scale across classrooms and across school districts. So one of the things we're working on is a learning experience model where we'll be able to show teachers and administrators, this is how you do this work. This is how you create immersive environments. This is what it looks like to have a student-centered inquiry-based learning opportunity. This is what it means to authentically assess and have students apply their learning. And what it means to have them reflect and then transfer the skills that they're building to the career readiness. And so for me, that's what's super exciting is this opportunity to take everything that I've been passionate about in my career and everything that I've tried to bring to the classroom, to the district, and put it into a model that other educators will be able to pick up and use in a really pragmatic way in order to begin to shift the classroom to being less knowledge based, knowledge dissemination, that teacher as what we say like the sage on the stage, to being a facilitator or a guide of learning where students are in the driver's seat of their learning. And with that it becomes more relevant, more engaging, and we see a lot of the kind of things that are hard right now in education, I imagine diminishing because we have that increased engagement and teachers are really able to do what they do best, which is bring that magic into the classroom.
Yes, absolutely. Great. I love that. And I just want to share a comment here also. Erica, who's joining us, she puts here, ooh, she's impressive. She says, going to send this to my boss. This is how I created my curriculum for my exploratory
Mhm.
class also as well. Just, teacher as a learning engineer. I mean, I think oftentimes, and I've had a friend of mine, Kevin Doherty, who's been on the show, and his phrase, and he says, it's just the word teachers, they're learning engineers. Like, we want
Mhm.
to get that out, building up that experiential learning. And you hit on so many great things, Michelle. And I want to kind of go into that a little bit, because I know one thing that we have seen is really just that teacher student communication, teacher student engagement. So I want to ask you, through your experience and maybe visiting some schools or maybe getting some feedback from teachers, or if you have any anecdotes or anything at all whatsoever, I would love to hear how Prosolve has been able to kind of bridge that gap in communication, and so teacher and student and teacher can definitely have that genuine connection while having this experiential learning experience. So we'll go ahead and start with you, Michelle. Tell us a little bit about that, and or what you have seen or heard from your users.
Well, we hear a lot of things. The biggest thing we always hear is how fun it was for teachers to facilitate Quest. Like, they're surprised at how much joy it brings into the classroom and how much they loved playing along with the students and being immersed in the environment. So I think that's a first thing that we hear. I think the other thing that we hear often from educators is kind of the surprise on what students are able to do. I think oftentimes we set limits, or we maybe don't open up the possibilities enough for students. And we see over and over again where teachers say, wow, when I really allowed productive struggle, my students really rose in a way that I don't typically see. And we talk about being less helpful with students and really just creating the conditions, posing the question for students to be curious, for them to have wonder, for them to discover. And when a teacher kind of steps back from feeling like they have to cover content and disseminate information, but create this condition for inquiry and curiosity, I think they're often surprised at what students are really capable of and able to imagine and persevere in a situation that maybe they hadn't thought of previously. And so I think that's one of the things that we see over and over again is, wow, now I know what my students are really capable of. I'm going to increase that productive struggle. I'm going to be less helpful in my other subject areas. Not always having the answer right away for the students, but actually redirecting them for them to dig a little deeper to find the answer, the information. And you know what? The other thing is often fail. And I think that's one thing we probably don't see enough of in our classrooms is that ability to try something, make a mistake, fail forward, and then learn from that. And we see that a lot in the teacher. We hear that from teachers, that they're seeing their students failure, and the growth mindset and the grit that comes from those learning experiences.
I love that. Travis, how about yourself? What are some experiences that you've heard or that you would love to share with all our audience members as to, like I mentioned, that connection and that genuine, wholesome learning experience that ProSolve brings into the classroom?
Yeah, our tagline for our product Quest is play, connect, create, which I think are three key aspects to engagement. When we go to design and build a product like Quest, there's really three aspects that we obsess over. And the first and foremost is student engagement, one that I think is often not always the priority of companies. The second is making it easy and adaptable for teachers. And the third is making sure that it's hitting the learning objectives of the administrators and so on. And so, speaking to engagement, I want to echo what Michelle said. There was two things that I really stuck out with me that she mentioned, which is really the teacher lighting a spark within them, and then also with the students, the failing forward concept. And I actually want to just share some quotes from students and teachers from our program. We do pretty in-depth assessments and analyze all of our players and students. And on the teacher side, one of the teachers said, I enjoyed the whole experience. I was just as engaged as the survivors, which are the students in our game, wanting to know what caused everything. I found myself itching to find out the answers to the mysteries in the videos as the kids played. So I want to echo that. I think this is an important aspect on how we design experiences that are engaging to students. It needs to be engaging for the educators as well. Their engagement is infectious, right? So if we can create something that piques their curiosity and gets them excited to teach, I think it's super powerful when we create student engagement. Furthermore, something we really try to instill in our product is bringing the art of teaching back to the forefront. So much of what we do is we've got the science of teaching. We kind of tie teachers' hands down, and we don't allow them to do what they're great at and do why they became a teacher most often. So we try to create a product and experience that brings their joy and love of teaching back to the forefront. Really, hopefully, right, that then trickles into their school day and the other aspects of what they're doing when they're teaching. So that's on the teacher side, which I think is often overlooked when we're talking about student engagement. I do want to mention the student engagement side and this idea of failing forward. Here are two quotes from students who've played. It was amazing. It was thrilling. It was difficult. It made learning fun. I hope I get to experience this feeling again. Quest was awesome, so challenging, but that's the good part about it. I love it so much. The reason I share these two is how often do students highlight the fact that it was difficult and that's why they enjoyed it in the classroom? So often kids are conditioned. We teach them that the objective of school is grades. And so they have a laser like focus to do the minimum effort to get the grade. And so it's not always often, they don't see it as failure and struggle is amazing signs for growth and development. And that's really what we want to see out of kids. So part of Quest and part of what I think creates engagement is the fact that it's difficult. It's using game-based aspects that, kids already love, but there's a reason kids keep playing Call of Duty where they die, get back up again, die, get back up again. It's the joy of overcoming something I didn't know was possible that I could do that is the engagement. And we rob our students of the most fun part of joy of learning when we spoon feed them what they need to be successful.
That is amazing, and a couple of things that you hit on is definitely just bringing the passion for teaching back. I know when I first started my career, it was very difficult in the sense that I didn't go through a traditional path. Actually, it's business and sales coming into education, not knowing, my standards and so on and so forth. But really, it was just being able to adapt through personalized learning and just really getting to know my students. But as the years progressed, I went from high school into elementary. And then, I moved from a teacher centered approach more to a student centered approach. And a lot of the things that you're describing really just, help me reminisce about my time in the classroom and allowing students to just show them the little that I did know on maybe some scratch coding or, just even with Chromebooks when they were just barely, they weren't even called Chromebooks yet. I forget what we had, but we had this big cow and we were just using all our devices and so on. And it was just amazing to see, like you mentioned, what students were able to do because we gave them that time. I allowed them to fail and fail forward and be resilient and of course work amongst each other. And I didn't have so much pressure on myself because now I saw that I didn't have to be the subject matter expert. All I needed to do was engineer that learning experience and allow them to grow within that experience. And everything that you are describing that is being able to get done through these quests is just amazing. And it's something that I wish I did see more in classrooms because, due to standardization or standardized testing, I should say, that leaves very little room, or at least teachers feel that pressure that they can't take a risk or kind of change their model and offer something such as this. and really allow students to have that time to communicate, to have that discourse, to build that resilience, to build those communication skills. So I absolutely am loving what I'm hearing, which kind of brings me to my next question. And we'll start with you this time, Travis. Like I mentioned, we the standardized testing, that's really what school seems to, be an environment full of, you know, data point assessments, you have benchmarks, you have state testing, and so on. And for myself, anything that I look into definitely has to amplify creativity. So I want to ask you, how does ProSolve nurture that creative, nature within us or within our students and within our teachers?
Yeah, I will make a quick comment. My struggle with the standardized tests is that often what we measure, we focus on, right? And so I think this is one of the biggest challenges. What I had mentioned earlier is we live in a different era, right? It's like imagine if we measured people on their ability to grow food, that would be crazy. And yet that's what career readiness was, right? It was physical labor, your ability to do that. And I kind of feel like that's where we're at right now. We're measuring things that are no longer the most vital to the success of where we're going. And to your point and to your question, the creativity of going from a consumer to a creator in any aspect of our life, I think is so powerful because it's through creation that we fail, we struggle, we tinker, we find passions, we find what ignites us, and it's really powerful. Um, for us, we have a product called Creators, which is an expansion of Quest, for example. And creators, I've actually got it behind me here. They're blank episodes. We build Quest as a TV series. So every year we launch a new season. There's over 2 hours of animated videos, and you get an episode in our Quest game to play as a class. And what we give each team is a blank episode box where they get to now go from players to creators. They get to dream up what characters do they want, what backstories do they want, what challenges and puzzles and components are they going to build? And then, of course, the best part, they get to play each other's episodes, not just episodes designed by a bunch of us, that do it for a living. And so I think that this is just one example that we do to empower that creativity and that mindset. And I just want to give an example outside of our own company as I think about something that we should focus on with our kids. When we think about the internet, I always say there's two ways to use the internet. Either you use the internet or the internet uses you. And what I mean by that is, me using the internet is using it to create or solve something. So if I want to learn how to build a desk in woodworking, I can go to YouTube. I'm looking for something to solve my problem. That is a great use of using the internet to solve my problems. The internet using me is my social media scrolling feed. I did not ask for this information that I'm consuming. It came to me, and therefore, might not be what's best for me, might take me off topic, might be whatever. And essentially, I am the product. I am being used, right? So when I think about being creators, I also think about like encouraging us to be, YouTube creators, not just YouTube consumers, as another example of how I think it plays an important role.
Love that. That is wonderful. And I appreciate that and sharing, the way that ProSolve works. And I think that is just something that is very unique. And given the opportunity, the things that you can do as a teacher, be able to enhance, again, going back to that learning experience. I think it's so important for me that when you do create a learning experience, it becomes something so, it becomes part of the student, and because the student has a hand in it, they play a huge role in it. And I think that that has always been my goal, that when you do provide a lesson, or when I did share, within our classroom, and even today when I work with teachers, is to create an experience that they can take with them, that made that much of an impact, that they can go and glean from wherever they are and that they move through, because they can adapt what they learn to whatever situation they are in. So that kind of brings me to my next question too. So Michelle, I want to ask you, as far as Quest also and that SEL component, understanding that we're talking about experiential learning, I want to ask you about that. How does Quest really take into account that SEL component to really help students, maybe just socially and emotionally within the game?
Sure. Well, first, I have to tell you a little bit about how we're aligned to Castle standards and, all of those things that are important to administrators and educators. But let me tell you about what really makes Quest really be an SEL curriculum. And it's really because they're learning by doing. So, as Travis has mentioned, when kids embark on in the world of Quest, they form teams and they are immediately immersed into this storyline where all of the adults have vanished. And you can imagine, Fonz, how that just pulls kids in right away, that dystopian storyline. All of the adults have vanished. What is going to happen? What has happened? And so they become part of the Quest world where they have to work as a team to figure out what has happened. And they actually are immersed in this environment that they are making decisions and they are solving problems and they are having to work together to figure out what is happening. Okay, so that right there has a high level of engagement. Now, where does SEL come in? Well, as they are faced with decisions, a team has to collect different perspectives, understand different ways of thinking about the scenario, about the situation, and then they have to agree and come to agreement on what decision will they make as a team. And so right there, you are tapping into kind of all some of those SEL skills around responsible decision making, around collaboration, around relationship skills, because when I've taught Quest before, kids don't always agree with what decision that they are going to make. And so just that idea of having a authentic problem that they have to solve and lean on those skills and work together as a team moves the SEL component into like a real world application versus I've seen some SEL curriculums where it's much more scenario discussion based, where you are going to hear about something that may happen and then you have to discuss what you would do in that situation. And, I don't know about you, but kids would always kind of tell me exactly what I needed to hear or what I wanted to hear in those situations to kind of move that SEL lesson along. And so with Quest, instead, they are part of this Quest world. So they have become it's a part of their identity, who they are, and so they want to make decisions as a team. And if they aren't working really well as a team, they reflect on that and then apply some strategies to improve that. And so that purposeful reflection or that intentional reflection is what we believe really transfers the skill building into the playground or the bus or the lunchroom or the math classroom. And so the other thing that is natural about Quest is that it is highly collaborative, and SEL is all about social learning. So every minute of the time that they are engaged with Quest, they're interacting with one another and they're learning in a social context. I think I really have to share this story with you around one recently when I was facilitating Quest in August. I had a group of most of the time kids will choose their teams. And so this group of three boys came to the program together and they knew each other. And this one kiddo came late. And so he joined the team. He didn't know the other boys at all. And you can imagine, they're upper elementary, almost middle school, kind of what that dynamic's like. And so one of the things that happened is that we got to this challenge where they had to do some coding on the computer. And it's hard. Like I struggle with it myself. And the kids were struggling and they were trying to fix this code and figure out this code. And this boy that was new to the group said, I am a professional coder. I make my own games. I can code." And he came into that group and helped the boys, and they won that challenge. And just that sense of belonging and like inclusivity that I saw come as a result of that situation where they weren't really a cohesive team, but this one student was able to bring his strengths. The other kids were able to see what he was able to contribute. They really they you know it built this other student's self-esteem. He really felt efficacious, that he was able to contribute to the group, and they were so excited that they won that challenge, and really saw how I said, as I asked them, like, what did you learn from that? And they're like, well, we all have different strengths. We didn't know how to code, but we are so glad we had him on our team. And so just that building of community in a classroom goes a long way in like really authentic situations where kids are playing in a way that's really purposeful for them. You can't replicate that through a discussion or even role playing or a worksheet or even literature. And I don't mean to say that any of those other methods are bad or poor. It's really just highlighting that Quest is different, and it's a different way of SEL skill building.
I love it. And one of the main things in everything that you said that I love is that it is so hands-on and it's still student-centered. I know within my district, the program that they're doing is really teacher-centered, teacher-focused, and it's like the teacher is, like you mentioned, laying out the scenarios. And of course, you just kind of move that along. Like you said, the students are, there really isn't a role play. It's just kind of like a sit and get.
Mhm.
And what you've just described is something that really takes that SEL component at a whole different level where it doesn't even feel like SEL. It's just really natural because you're playing this game. And again, you're getting to know your friends around you and people that you normally maybe wouldn't even talk to. You're teaming up with them and you're finding that you have so many commonalities. You see your strengths, you see your weaknesses. And I love everything that you described because I feel that that's something, again, I've experienced that, and it's something that we definitely need to bring back more into the classrooms, and allowing teachers to see that there is time for this, that this is not a waste of time. I always took a lot of time at the beginning of the year to get to do these kinds of
Mhm.
activities. And I didn't even teach probably till the second week. And a lot of teachers is like, hey, you haven't even started. I was like, trust me, the return on
Mm.
instruction is going to pay off because of my return on investment in them. And I think that this experience that you have created through Quest and that the students are able to take is something that, again, that experience that they get to take from year to year and knowing those skills and taking what they've learned there, and they can adapt it to the next year and they can adapt it to a real world situation, because that's the point, building them up for that future of work and the future that is coming. So I absolutely love that. Travis, anything that you'd love to add to that?
Just a quick story that really cemented it for me. You know, kids were playing our summer camp over last summer, and a superintendent, she called me real time, and she just shared with me that one of her students who has special needs, they played with the students over summer, and at recess during in the middle of the break, she went outside and saw that the kid with special needs was initially not joining in and playing, and his tribe, his team, because they bond hardcore through our game. They're part of these teams. Immediately identified that, went up and asked him to participate with them at recess. And the superintendent was in tears, calling me, telling me this. And I think that's what was so often overlooked when we make teaching a science, that we forget all the things that we really get from going to school. And the pandemic just showed us this because, you know, a lot of the actual lecture learning could continue online. But you know what couldn't continue? is that opportunity for those kids to play on that playground in that moment in that time. And so I think that for me, it just, those kind of stories cement the power of creating really authentic environments that allow for student led experiences that lead to great personal growth.
I love that. That's excellent. Well put, Travis. And I mean, I really appreciate that sharing. You're absolutely right. That connection was lost during pandemic. And just to tell a little story, kind of as far as connection, when we finally came back to brick and mortar, I remember walking into one of our teachers' ninth grade classrooms. So when we were on lockdown, I think the students must have been in sixth grade, so they missed that junior high section, seventh and eighth grade. So when I came into the ninth grade classroom, because she had a tech question, or actually, I think we were going over a platform. When I walked in, we noticed that all the boys were on one side and all the girls were on the other side. And I asked, I was like, Is that the way that you sat them?" And they're like, "No, that's just the way that they sat themselves." And to me, I was thinking, that awkward stage in junior high, you have the high school dance or the junior high dance where all the boys are on one side and all the girls are on the other side. It seems like they just kind of missed that
Mhm.
altogether. And now in ninth grade, that's coming and, showing itself in that aspect. I had sixth grade teachers stating that their sixth graders were outside playing freeze tag and the games that normally, the younger students would play, but they were just reconnecting again, like missing out on so much. And I think something like this, what you are offering through Quest and that experience, is something that can definitely help our current situation, and then just to continue to help our students continue to grow, like I mentioned, and prepare them for that future to be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome in any situation based on the skills that they're gaining here through Quest. So before we kind of wrap up and and getting to the tail end of the show, Travis, I want to ask you, can you tell our audience members a little bit more as far as what the program is, what it looks like as far as the gameplay? Because I know that there are some digital and physical components. So if you can kind of give us a little brief overview so our audience can just get a little bit more info on that as they go and look up Prosolve, and you never know, they might be contacting you directly.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of the little bit more of the nuts and bolts of it. So our game consists of both digital subscription elements, physical products, and in-person support and professional development to all come together to create a very powerful experience that changes the way we think and the way we look at it. And so the concept here is, we have a kind of like the video game screen that the teacher gets to use at the front of the classroom. So kids are not all sitting at their computer playing a game. That's not this game. It's that the teacher has a video game interface with a whole animation experience that basically automates the process for them. We've got a little QB bot that flies in, and it's an AI robot that teaches the kids and the teacher how to play the game, how to do the challenges. It's got a lot of board game mechanics. There's food tokens that they have to collect to survive, and they pay their food tax. So they learn about having to pay taxes at the end of each episode. They've got part tokens. These part tokens allow them to build cool technology to help them survive in this post-apocalyptic world. But going back to that video game experience, it's really full of animated videos to immerse them in the story and also to teach them how to play and how to engage. And so, what's nice about that is, the teacher often is not even an expert in the game. In fact, the kids will tell the teacher, "Oh, that's not how this rule works," or "Let's do this or that," and we love that. And now the teacher really gets to focus on getting to know their kids and engaging with them. We also have something called Connect, which I think is really powerful. And this is the idea of kind of taking a break from the immersion of the game and asking the kids, "Hey, what are you wanting to improve on? Do you guys feel like you're struggling making that decision as a government, in that last choice? Well, let's actually break that down and let's do an exercise to help us get better at making decisions." And the reason that's powerful is they have immediate application to the new knowledge that they're going to learn or the new experience that they're going to have. And I think that's the key. They need application in genuine and authentic ways to really grow and excel in it. So those are some of the aspects of our game and how it works. Each episode takes 90 minutes or so to play, and it's about 20 hours of instruction time. Unless you get the creators expansion, it can go up to 60 hours of instruction time.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. Thank you so much, Travis, for sharing that. And Michelle, just I know we're wrapping up, but just any last comments that you would love to add, either going along with what Travis, or something that you would love to add yourself, also to share with our audience members.
Thanks. Thanks, Fonz. I was thinking a little bit about that. You asked the question about creativity, and Travis really talked about creativity for how we build creativity with students. And I just want to mention with our learning experience model, the focus really is on helping teachers be creative in the classroom. So the thing that really sets apart the work that we're doing with experiential learning is because we start with an immersive environment. So really helping teachers to kind of unleash their creativity and think differently about how they're going to kind of create that classroom environment, set the stage for learning. And an example I think of is when I was in the classroom, one of the things that we were teaching is world history. And so we were focused on the Egyptian time period. And so I turned my classroom into an Egyptian museum, and all students were working to create exhibits for our Egyptian museum. And they each picked each group picked their area of interest. Some looked at Egyptian art, some looked at food and drink, some looked at Egyptian war weapons. I think that might have been the number one group for some of the fifth grade boys, was the weapons of war. But basically what they did then is they had to create their artifact, they had to research their artifact, they had to become the docent, and like the classroom became this museum environment where every day students came in and said, are we working on our artifacts today? What are we doing for our museum? When do our parents get to come through the museum? And they were fully immersed in that experience, which is very, very different than me standing in the front of the room talking about Egyptian history, them filling out a worksheet or documenting with notes the key points of Egyptian history. So I paint that picture because I think when we think about creativity and bringing back the art of teaching, that's what we're talking about, is how do teachers create those immersive environments that really tap what students are interested in, what's relevant to them, what they're passionate about, and then create and still have the really high levels of rigor and instruction that meets our standards and meets the measures that our schools are held accountable to, but does it differently in a way that really is purposeful for kids and brings back that art of teaching for teachers. And so I just, I wanted to highlight how we're helping teachers kind of tap into their creativity and think about creating these immersive worlds that kids can learn content through.
I love that. And that's something that I'm a big proponent of, as far as amplifying creativity. Yes, I would love for the students also to get very creative, but right now it's just my focus is on teachers too. Just, tap into that. Oftentimes it's just we're so consumed with everything, and I understand it's not easy, spinning 100 plates and then getting 13 added on in one day.
Right.
But I oftentimes feel that investment into the tapping into that creativity, and like you mentioned, doing lessons like this and really just immersing yourself, and really you're bundling really several lessons in one, because it could be just one big unit, but just to tap back into that, and that really, for myself, in my experience, there was less pressure because we knew what the whole picture was, but we
Right.
were all in it together. And at the end, I had learning artifacts that I had as evidence that the students did get the learning that they needed and that they mastered those concepts. And so I absolutely loved everything that you described. And we had Mr. Arvin Ross who's joining us, and says, hey, where were you when I was in fifth grade? So definitely would be a great fifth grade lesson, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
Uh,
I think that one thing I'll just say, Fonz, that made me think about what you said earlier, where you don't, as a facilitator of learning, you don't have to hold all the knowledge. So you didn't have to prep all the lessons to deliver the content. You just had to be a really great guide to students and facilitate them on the learning journey. So
Absolutely. Love
less,
it.
less prep for teachers for sure.
Yes. Well, Michelle, Travis, thank you so much for being here this evening. I appreciate everything that you shared through Prosolve, the work that you're doing, the vision that you have, and the passion that you bring to this, and it's really exciting. And right now I've been smiling this whole time because it's just I love what it is that this can do into the class, or bringing this into the classroom, what it can do and the positive effects that it can have on both teacher and students. And so, absolutely love the work that you're doing. And I wish you the best as you continue to move forward with what you're doing through ProSolve. But before we wrap up and before we end the show, I always love to end the show with these last three questions. So, hopefully, you guys are ready. And we'll go ahead and start with Travis first. So, Travis, my question to you is, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
I would say the buildup of outdated infrastructure. And here's what I mean by that. We have so much entrenched into what education is today that it is so hard to innovate and do something different. And we live in an era where different is necessary, but very difficult to do. And so, my kryptonite in education is the compounding infrastructure that stifles creativity and innovation.
Excellent. Great answer. Thank you so much, Travis. Michelle, how about you? In the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
So for me, it would be any kind of deficit thinking. So deficit thinking about teachers, deficit thinking about students, particularly. I think oftentimes I hear conversations where we hear words like they can't or they won't be able to. And that really puts limits on students. And so I think that is my kryptonite, is that we really have to think about the strengths students bring and open up their limitless possibilities.
Excellent. Wonderful answer, both of you. Thank you so much. All right, Michelle, we're going to start with you on this one. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Well, my billboard would help Travis's kryptonite, because my billboard would say, "Unlearning takes courage. What paradigms have you shifted today?" So
Nice.
and the thought behind that is exactly what Travis said, is that our system in education right now is perfectly designed to get the results that it's getting. And that systems change is really hard. Unlearning is really hard, and it takes courage. And every day you got to wake up and say, what am I going to do differently today? Can I shift today? And it's little by little that when individuals do that and then come together with PLCs doing that and having that unlearning mindset, that will begin to shift the system.
Excellent. Wonderful answer. Travis, how about yourself? If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
It would be parents, all caps, exclamation point, stop helping your kids. And the reason for that is we are in a society where we are robbing our kids of problem solving and thinking critically. When we do everything for them, we chauffeur them around everywhere. We, give them step-by-step instructions, and we do not allow them to sit in the suck, to embrace the failure at times, to troubleshoot through things and learn such valuable skills they need to succeed in the workforce.
Excellent. Great answer, Travis. Thank you so much. All right. And the last question, Travis, we'll start off with you this time, is if you had to author a book starting tomorrow, what would your book be about?
I'll go with the same thing. Parents, exclamation point, play video games with your kids. I could say a bunch of other books we could write on experiential learning, things like that. But, just for fun, I'd love to just encourage the power of play through the eyes of your kids and to join them in their world and have them teach you and have them see you struggle and fail as you are terrible at that potential video game, and then overcome it with them together. And I think there's a lot of power and beauty in that.
Excellent. Wonderful answer. I definitely agree with that. All right, Michelle, how about you? If you had to author a book starting tomorrow, what would your book be about?
Well, Fonz, I'm going to tell you about the book that we are going to write, which is all about human intelligence for career readiness, what it means to build human intelligence in the age of AI, why it's important, and how we're going to do it. And so that is the book that we're going to write. And I can't wait for you to be one of our first readers, Fonz. I'll send you the autographed copy.
Yay. Excellent. I appreciate that, Michelle. Thank you so much. Travis, Michelle, Prosolve, thank you for being here this evening and just sharing really your passion. I really enjoyed this talk. It really filled my bucket and really set me up for the rest of my week. So many great sound bites and so many wonderful things that you're doing. And just hearing it from you, the creators, the founders, that the time and the heart that you put into this really shows in this conversation. And I would imagine, so even seeing this in action, how well this would do. And again, the goal being preparing our students for that future that we haven't seen yet, but they'll be ready to easily improvise, adapt, and overcome based on what they learn together, and also amplifying teacher creativity, amplifying learning experiences. It's really exciting. So thank you so much for finding a little bit of your time or spending a little bit of your evening with me today as I get to chat it up with you. So thank you for all that you do. And for all our audience members that were joining us, we had Arvin who was joining us. We had Tim Cavey. We had Erica Sandstrom who was joining us. We had my friend Oscar. And for all of you that are going to be catching this on the replay or checking it out on your favorite podcast player, thank you as always for your support. Please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 247 wonderful episodes with educators, creators, founders, edupreneurs, solopreneurs, and just CEOs. And I promise you, you will find a little bit of something for you where you can take some nice knowledge nuggets from and sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. So thank you so much for all of your support. And if you can do us a favor, guys, please make sure you follow us on all socials at myedtechlife. And please jump over to our YouTube channel and subscribe, guys. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That would mean a whole world to us as we try to continue to bring you these amazing conversations week in and week out. So thank you as always. And until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.